for something that just moved in one of these two rooms.
We're documenting a structure that we found last night.
I'll go up to the house, bang on it and say, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Now
What the fuck was that?
Did you hear that?
He's been here for about a month.
Yeah, he was here last
Hey,
week.
what's up, guys? This is Leo with the Cryptic Heartland podcast. This is episode number 28, I believe. This is the part 2 continuation of JFK from last week. I just put a post on the Facebook page here just a few minutes ago that said that we were having trouble with the Facebook live feed, so we're going to do it strictly on the YouTube page here tonight. So be prepared. What's going on, guys?
Oh, not much. Still looking forward to finishing this up tonight.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
we can wrap it up.
Hopefully.
And
We don't get overwinded on anything here.
we tried to last week, and apparently we never made it all the way through.
Well, I think tonight's going to be great because we're going to actually talk about what everybody's been hearing
Yeah,
over the past, couple months.
right.
So,
Yeah, especially with the release of the documents and things of that
Mhm.
nature, and just all the
Yeah.
great
The
conspiracies.
release of documents.
So, well, like I said, once again, this is the Cryptic Heartland podcast. This is the podcast talks about everything from paranormal to UFOs to Bigfooting, pretty much everything under the sun and then some. And like we always say, no topic is off limits, and we like to
Jeremiah likes to poke bears.
poke that proverbial bear. Yep. So, I got Leo tonight, got Jason, Michelle, and Roth. So. Let's dig. Oh, Max is
Max,
the man
yeah.
behind the scenes. You can't see him. He doesn't have a camera on tonight, so we're
Okay.
trying. He's there in spirit, and, or by voice, anyways. So we're gonna start off with a recap of what we did last week. So, Jason, you want to take it away?
You want me to do it?
Heck yeah, I want to do it.
All right, so everybody knows the facts. It was November 22nd, 1963,
Yep.
Dallas, Texas, there in Daley Plaza where JFK was assassinated. It's been something that we have been wanting to talk about for a long time. I know you and I have been talking about it for about 2 years.
At least.
I've been listening to you guys for, 3
Three,
years?
4, 5 years.
Whatever.
When you talk about, conspiracies or anything like that, you can't help but talk about JFK and everything that happened that day because there's such a confusion. Even though in reality, things only happen one way. But it's how we as people, we tend to get everything strewn out in different ways, and we come up with different theories or different ideas, or people heard this, saw this, and it's whether or not we, so I would love to actually try to get as much information out tonight that we can about the facts of the events. As history would let you know, and what we've talked about, supposedly, as the Warren Commission says, 3 shots were fired, all coming from the book depository building. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested about 45 to 50 minutes after the shooting. They, somehow figured out it was him. Officer Tippett was shot in the process. They arrested Oswald in a theater and
Charged him with that crime too.
charged him with that crime as well. So he's been being charged on 2 counts of murder or whatever they want to, charge him with. They didn't actually charge him to his face. It was, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But after the shooting, the president was rushed to Parkland Hospital where he was pronounced dead a short time later. And with some of the facts that we talked about last week, we talked about how there was a possibility of multiple shots, more than just 3, that were fired. Some people were saying 4, some people were saying 6. There's eyewitnesses to different areas. There, as you all have seen in footage, you've seen people and police running up the grassy knoll because everyone's pointing up there. There's people pointing to the picket fence over on the side of the book depository. There's even a guy stationed in the train station tower, which is not that far from the picket fence, behind the building of the book depository. It's kind of on the side. It's not that far. He saw a commotion and saw two guys walk off very quickly, and he swore he saw a blast and what looked like gun smoke possibly over there in that area, and somebody driving off very quickly in a car, which didn't make sense to him given what was going on. You have, well, do we want to start from there?
We can jump anywhere we want to.
Let's go into
dive
it.
head
Let's
first
go into
and
it. That's what
get
we know so
crazy.
far.
Yep.
Well, where do you want to start? I'm asking you now, so I'm gonna.
Do you have any more you want to add to the Oswald arrest? Anything that you kind of wrap it up a little bit, or
For Oswald, for his arrest, which always got struck out of my mind, is when he was arrested. Like you said, 45 minutes to 50 minutes later, he was arrested. He was found in the theater, as Max has some photographs there at the very beginning of some of the ones that I sent you. It was photograph. Well, I mean, if you back up to don't pick that one. Pick the second one. Go into the.
Why do you even put them in order?
Sorry, in the next one. Sorry, I know. We're kind of skipping over this just for the simple fact that we. Yeah, no, not that one. It's the fact that we hit on that. Go to this one. Sorry, Max. This is a picture of Oswald being led out. It was mass chaos in front of the theater after Oswald was pointed out, rushing in there. He had bought a ticket, rushed in there, and sat down. The police pointed him out, along with some of the people that saw him go in and sit. When Oswald sat there, it is known that he actually said something, whether it was to the regards of "this is it" or "it all ends now." The fact that he said something along those lines, everybody says it's at least those two statements that he says. But he says "this is it," and when he goes to stand up, as the police officers are coming down the aisle of the theater to him, he stands up and clocks one of the police officers. At that point, they attack him, and he starts throwing up his hands, saying, "I'm not resisting arrest. Why are you doing this? I'm not resisting
So then
arrest."
why did he clock?
Why did he do that? And that's what a lot of people don't know. Why did he sit there and go, "What? This is it," and he stands up, as if he knows, okay, this is it. So he's guilty of something. Definitely guilty of something. But then they beat him up. But he, they clock him, which he's got the cut above his eye. He's if you go to the next photograph, you can kind of see the wound above his eye. This is him after they get him to the police station, and the media, of course, is all over him. And he's, constantly saying, "I did not do this, I did not do this." And as you can see in this photograph, he is wearing still the same clothes that he wore from the when he was working that day at the depository. He's wearing two different shirts. He's got a white T-shirt and a darker shirt there. This is when they arrest him. Now, in a short time, in the next, stages of the process, when they go to interrogate him, he ends up just with his white T-shirt on. They put him in a lineup. The lineup was from the eyewitnesses of when supposedly the shooting of Officer Tippett. He's screaming, and don't take my word for it. You can even watch this on YouTube. There's even videos of him screaming, saying, "Please give me a sweater, give me a jacket. Have you not seen the guys that are lining up with me? They're all wearing something different. They're all wearing something that makes me stand out. I'm just wearing a white T-shirt. Of course I'm going to stand out to these people." So he's already saying, "Hey, I'm going to be picked out." So he's already seeing that they're not, and none of his interrogations were completely recorded. So there's some manuscripts of what he said, but what did he actually say? We'll never know because he's dead. And then finally, right before they walk him out into the next photograph, you see that they've given him a sweater. They've given him a sweater to walk out. Why? Who knows? They gave him a change of clothes and all that, just so he can walk out. And it's during this time, and in this photograph right here that's being shown.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
That was shown.
That was
That was shown. Oswald, if you can look back to that one photograph, Oswald can, if you can see, this is a photograph that everybody says is when he turns and looks and sees Ruby.
And makes eye contact with him, like kind of
Right.
acknowledges him. Oh, there's Ruby, who I know. They think.
There's a lot of people say that is who he's looking at when he goes and turns and looks, because he's looking in the right direction of. It's almost like if it's an acknowledgement to each other or not, who knows? But it's very odd. And then you have Jack Ruby, who comes out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, but he comes right out from the crowd and shoots.
And it's odd that he nods to him, but then
Like he kind of makes eye
He
and
looks-
then
contact.
Ruby
yeah.
comes out and shoots him.
He looks right at him, and then Ruby jumps out and gets him, and just nails him. One shot.
Well, and
so-
Ruby was part of the was he part of the mob?
That's
Ruby.
what's reported, but
It's all known that Ruby. He was he owned a strip club.
yeah.
It's rumored that a lot of police officers went there. He allowed them to drink and do things there. Supposedly he was a kind of low level mafia or gangster, always wanting to be a part of everything and look like he's important and be part of that lifestyle. He was always, I don't know, you can't say, there's nothing saying in history that he was like a mafia leader of any kind. But you can, if you read about him and everything, there's a lot of people who say he did everything he could to look that way, to live that lifestyle, to be part of it, and probably would take orders if given.
And so, with that being said, with the upcoming film that we watched, it makes sense from some of the stuff that we heard about him being part of the mob, the lower end guy. Maybe he actually recognized him like, oh shit.
Or
And he knew
Well,
it was coming.
they were together possibly.
Mhm.
The grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And Ruby was actually ill. He was actually dying.
Yeah.
So it would, if you want to go into a conspiracy thought of it, why not ask the guy
You're right.
who's dying, hey, why don't you go out in history and do one, final thing for yourself?
Makes
It would make sense, because
Yeah.
but when supposedly the police, when they interrogate Ruby, all he says is that he was doing that for Jackie. He wanted to avenge his president. He wanted to be, all of a sudden he's this political, USA guy, when everybody says that was never Jack. He was never that type of person. At least all the eyewitnesses who knew him, who were questioned about, Jack Ruby, who was he? And they're like, he wasn't political. He wasn't this way. He wasn't this all-American boy. And then all of a sudden he does this in an emotional way to avenge the president. But then the final photograph of Oswald being taken away. He's quickly, it was like Johnny on the spot. At least in the videos, it was like Johnny on the spot with the gurney there. It was like they had it just waiting around the corner almost, and they come rushing in with it, and they just get him up and loaded up in the truck and out. It was very quick. It was, to me, it was just, I always thought it was very staged and planned out. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about it, but
Well, because most of the time they don't do that. They set there a while, they bring in the investigators, they don't make rash.
it's just it all was
Decisions
very
like that.
Yeah, it was very fishy to me from the beginning. Every time I watch it, I've always had this weird feeling like that that was, I mean, why are they walking him out to the crowd like that? It took them forever to even get the truck backed up in there, and one time they had to like go and get a different vehicle, bring it in because they couldn't fit the truck that they were gonna take him off in, and they just allowed a crowd to just sit there.
Yeah, most of the time, everything I've read about or heard about the whole layout was, there's something they never really did that. They never really took people that way or something, or possibly they usually don't let that large of a crowd come in and see this person, being taken in and out of the building. Usually it's kind of hush hush. You would think somebody of this magnitude that possibly just killed the president, they would want to, seal it off as much as they could. That way it's controlled and they can go to trial. But for whatever reason, that's not the case.
I mean, that
But
makes sense.
if you got all those people involved,
Right.
what a perfect way to do it.
Right.
You got the guy that's on his deathbed.
Right.
You got mass chaos. It's perfect to hide it.
Yeah.
But in reality, if you were a police, the one person you'd want to keep alive is the assassin that you're charging, because you want to hear the stories. You want to hear why did it happen?
Right.
Who was with you?
But
Was anybody
again,
behind you?
after
Yeah.
we talk about this
Yeah.
video coming up, you start realizing who's actually involved and why they wanted that stopped. I mean, look what Kennedy was, was getting ready to do.
Right.
Right.
And as far as, shutting down everything.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
They had to do something quickly.
Yeah. Kennedy wanted to get rid of the CIA. He wanted to get rid of the mafia. And he made statements that he was going to splinter the CIA. He was going to get rid of it. His brother Robert was helping him try to eliminate all this. This was all leading up to Dallas. Now, this wasn't the first assassination attempt. There's been others that were stopped previously.
Right.
Cars being stopped with guns in the trunk and stuff like that. It was constantly like that fear or that plan that was trying to be worked out finally.
Yeah. And part of the reason they think the whole thing was mob related, like we talked about, and just, there's different angles. Kennedy, his whole election was set up by the mob. I mean, they persuaded voters in Chicago in that area to vote for Kennedy. And the kickback was, he was supposed to take care of the mob, and now all of a sudden you're trying to get rid of him. So that was one reason they thought he got killed, possibly. And supposedly his dad was even, was it Jack, whatever they called him. He was involved with the mob somehow. They said he was the dirtiest one on the wall. So that's what the rumor
There's something
was.
about him, alcohol,
Yeah, bootlegging and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
that's how they
yep.
made their money or something.
Yep. So and here you had all this going on, and Kennedy was told, Jack had told Jack Senior had told him, hey, get my son elected, he'll take care of you guys. And then once they elected, Kennedy's did a 180 and trying to work his way to get rid of him. Him and his brother are trying to eliminate the mob. And then you got the Bay of Pigs, that whole scenario with the CIA and Kennedy supposedly was supposed to go in there and try to help get rid of Castro and all that stuff, and then he last minute decided not to. And there's a whole kind of,
That's a whole nother show.
well, I mean, possibly, but it ties into why the CIA, the Bay of Pigs, and the mob supposedly worked together to possibly set this assassination up.
Yeah.
Because they had both of them wanted him dead, or out of office at least. So why not get together and put a big cover up together, and next thing you know, it worked. So.
And if you've seen the Oliver Stone movie, you've at least know the majority of this, of the leading up to some of the conspiracy and the story of Bay of Pigs and all that.
Yep. Max, you're gonna do video A. Sorry, Max. I thought you were ready. My bad.
You're fine.
Hey,
Yep. This one kind of tells you why, possibly what did it. You kill our mics in the studio, we'll turn our power on.
No problem.
With Kennedy's failure to provide air cover during the Bay of Pigs invasion, his unwillingness to invade Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis created a convergence of interests aligning anti-Castro Cubans, the Mafia, and the CIA, who now felt that they would be better off with Kennedy out of the way. What had been a plot to kill Castro turned to a plot to kill Kennedy with a ready-made fall guy by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald, and the stage was set for the assassination of the president.
Something behind you.
Yeah, it's like there's more in there. Our mics live, hot mics. Yeah,
Hot
so
mics.
that video, basically, like I said, just pretty self-explanatory. It talks about the Bay of Pigs and why the CIA was involved and why they wanted, one angle possibly to why they work together to off Kennedy. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. But what angle do we talk about next?
Go for it.
Oh,
You're doing good.
Well, I am. Go ahead.
No, so when you come to the conspiracy part for the actual shooting, which this will tie into your video and everything, the parade route was actually changed. I think even the Secret Service wasn't aware of too much of the change.
Right.
And so they weren't supposed to go past the book depository. It was supposed to go in a totally different direction. But that day, the president doesn't have the bubble guard over the car, and every building around was allowed to be free-flowing. They had windows open, people hanging banners out, waving out the windows, which is something that Secret Service would never have done.
Right.
Their one job is to do everything but a clean sweep, and I don't know how much in 1963 they did do everything, but from everything you read, they're supposed to have had a clean sweep of everything, know exactly where everyone is, every window is supposed to be shut, but that's not the case. And some factors, the Secret Service some of them were called off.
So how, like when you say the route was it switched an hour prior, or was it switched?
I don't think it was an hour, but it was within 2-3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So then they would have had time to
They
have
had
gone
time
in
to-
and
they had time
do
to
what
give
you're
each
talking
other
about.
enough words saying, okay, routes, this has changed, so we finally got it this way, just thinking
So the
out
police
loud.
had time to go do their sweep.
No, they weren't supposed to have any windows open. People weren't supposed to be hanging out windows anywhere during the parade route. They're not supposed to do that. They wouldn't allow it today either.
Right.
You're not supposed to be doing that because there's a chance of a sniper. There could be a lunatic up there shooting at whoever's, you're not supposed to do that. Especially the president going down the street. No. So that was allowed. Secret Service was being called off. There's even videos of one Secret Service, jumping off the car, and he's kind of looking around with his arms up in the air going like, why am I being called off? And he's just kind of doing this number.
So he would be more open.
Well, there was reports also too, supposedly that JFK himself said, he didn't want them on the back of the car like they should have been because he wanted it to be more friendly for the viewers to see, instead of just him being so guarded. He wanted it to be out in the open so he could wave to everybody and be the people's president kind of a thing. But
Very true.
that was one rumor. I mean, it's all hearsay from we weren't there.
I've always heard that he didn't want the bubble. He
Yeah.
wanted to be able to reach out if people were there,
Right.
and be open with people. He wanted to be seen. But
Yeah.
Secret Service is supposed to have that whole area blocked off, every building, skyscraper, all that. You're not supposed to be hanging out the window or banners and stuff like that. It's supposed to, but there's people, there was a woman, there was not a woman, but there was a guy having a seizure on the street.
Yep.
That it was weird. Nobody kind of made notice to that. There was like all these certain things that were like taking notice away from the car. I mean, it's in the movie, it's in the reports. There's just certain events leading up to the shooting that was just very strange. There's, what the Umbrella Man.
Right.
The one guy who is.
What's the Umbrella Man? Tell him some of
So it's Umbrella Man. He's in the footage. He's in the Zapruder film.
Yeah.
He's photographs from the other side of the street from people who have taken photographs. Hey, have you seen him, Umbrella Man? He's in photographs where he's the only person that day. It was
Sunny
just,
day, bright, no rain.
and prior to the car coming by, are you okay, man?
He's dying. It's fine.
You okay
Is it
over there?
conspiracy?
So he's the only one that is holding an umbrella over him, and it just happens he opens it up about time for the actual shooting, and he's just standing there, and whether or not he's making signals or
That's what they
whatnot.
think. I think it was signal to
Possibly.
the shooters, and now it's time to shoot, kind of a thing.
Now they've
Yeah.
been able to track the person down in question. He's just like, no, I'm not part of anything, but deny. Maybe he's not. But it was very strange and odd, just very odd to the whole moment of the whole assassination when you have that. Then you have I'm gonna say her name. They dubbed her the Babushka lady. Babushka lady, I think is what you call her. She everyone is running in panic with the gunshots, and she's the only one who's still standing there. Not even phased. She's just standing straight, and she has this scarf. I think it's what they say, was it a Russian scarf or something like that? Russian attire.
Is she in shock, maybe?
I mean, could be, but they've never been able to track her down. Never been able to. But she's just the only one standing there and just as calm as can be in the photograph. While everyone else is rushing around, falling to the ground or running up the grass, or something like that.
Well, oh, sorry. I
Yeah.
thought that was
No,
wrong.
that's me, sorry.
But are you okay?
I'm gonna have to go grab some water, maybe.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. But so you have those kind of incidents
Right.
that's happening during the right at the heartbeat of the.
The moment, basically.
At the moment of the assassination, you have all that's happening, which no one's been able to truly explain about these people that were seen.
They're just weird occurrences that seem out of place during a time when panic is setting in, or just in general, the fact that perfect crime's gonna happen. There's also the report of I think it's the British tabloid or British newspaper getting a phone call 25 minutes before saying something big's gonna happen in America.
Right.
Call the FBI. And it hung up. They could never trace, and nobody did anything with it. But why would somebody have any kind of knowledge of this prior to an event actually happening in America, unless maybe they had some kind of insider truth behind it, or knew some things that I don't know. It made no sense, but it's still a report. That there's all kinds of reports like that out there.
And you have the woman who just a few days prior to the assassination, she was found dumped on the side of a road.
Right.
When she was taken to the hospital, she kept crying and pleading with the doctors, something bad's going to happen to Kennedy. They're going to kill him.
Right.
They're going to kill him. And they just, blew her off as,
being either crazy or
Crazy,
just
yeah.
trauma or whatever, just
and she later died. She was found dead.
right.
But she was trying to warn everybody, they're going to kill Kennedy. They're going to kill him. And she was a showgirl.
Yeah. Her
so-
name was Lola. No I'm kidding. 3 people get that joke. Sorry. Inappropriate. I'm sorry. Anywho.
But you have that. You have everything leading up to it that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, just for it to be, in the Warren Commission's eyes, the written official report, to them it's black and white, but to everybody else, what about all these extra little things that are going on that nobody can explain, or, the way they explain it, they have an answer for it, but it's either they just brush it off, or it's just, it is what it is, kind of a thing. They don't really pay it no mind, but yet they still exist. So it's like, that's what gives people that have great conspiracies, or, especially in this one, the greatest conspiracy of them all to me. I mean, I think it seems like this gives it kind of some credibility. The other ones you can shoot down and be like, no pun intended, but you could, like the 9/11 stuff, or, just different things like that. There's a lot of loopholes in their stories, but this one has some concrete hard
Yeah.
for evidence. It's like, well, what if it's true?
Yeah.
So, kind of shifting gears a little bit. Sorry,
No, go for it.
Kind of about the whole. We kind of touched base last week about the whole magic bullet theory with Connolly and things like that. But what if there was a chance, and we have some photos of this. Max, I'll give it to you. One of them would be, you can go first with the magic bullet, and then just any of them. Sorry, and then I want to go to the next one. So.
Government documents show the assassination rifle was shipped back to Dallas on Sunday, November 24, 1963, and that an FBI team spent a long time in the mortuary with Oswald's body the next day. Paul Grudy, the funeral home director, said years later that he was there when the FBI put that rifle in Oswald's dead hand. "I had trouble getting the fingerprint ink off his hands in time for the burial," he said. Yet a blurry palm print belatedly produced by a Dallas police officer and identified as belonging to Oswald was instrumental in convincing the public of his guilt.
Some thinking about it, and they're saying now that the car logistics kind of helps explain this. So
I've heard
if you go to the limo, I think I have another one. Oh, Jason had it. There's that one. So they're saying this one that you're pulling up now, Max is pulling up. This one right here, of course, you have Kennedy, who, number one, had a severe back injury. He had multiple surgeries where he had to wear a brace on his back up to his adult life up to the day he died.
Very true.
You had this, he's up above everybody else. Him and his wife are sitting higher up by design. They're sitting up above the crowd, the people in the car. Now, Governor Connolly and his wife are sitting in jump seats that are not proportionate to where Kennedy's sitting. They're actually in more, closer to in the middle of the limo, as you can see by the second kind of little line there.
And weren't they supposed to be sitting a little lower?
Yes, a little lower. And then before ahead of them, you have the driver and, of course, the other, I think, the Secret Service guy on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you go to the picture now where the bullet is, you can either do that. Sorry, you have a picture up. If you go to the one, it's called single bullet. It's the red one with the yellow line. This actually makes more sense as to why this could have happened. So you see it goes through his back, out through his throat. When the shots are happening, Connolly actually turns back. You see him in the video turn back. Seconds before that, turns to see what's going on. Because to what I've heard, when the first shots went ring out, Kennedy says, or maybe it's hit. He says, "I'm hit," whatever, or something. They're trying to kill me, or whatever it is. He turns around and looks. That's why he's looking back to see what's going on. Supposedly Connolly. That's what the report says.
Right.
So that's why he's starting to look back, and then that's why in a split second he makes that face that we've seen, where he's all of a sudden in pain.
He's screaming out
because it goes through him, and ends up, as you can see, this picture clearly defines. It makes sense to why it went through his back, through his neck, into Connolly's right side, hit his wrist, and then to his left thigh. I mean, I'm not saying this is true or not, but the fact that you look at the picture, Connolly is inward more on the jump seat. Kennedy is on the outside of it, as you saw him. He has his arm outside the car most of the ride, waving to people.
But what about the back wound to the neck?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
is it? Did the bullet zig up and then out?
Well, I think it's the angle of it, because you're sitting at an angle. Because remember, this is at the 6th floor
Right.
repository, so you're angled down.
That's true.
So it's coming out, and Kennedy's kind of like, if you're sitting like this, waving, and it comes out his back, comes out his neck, and hits the person in front of you.
You want to show that one?
Yeah, you can do that. This is the actual, once again, we showed it last week. Sorry about the graphic photo, but this shows you how the entry went from the back, out his neck. Now, I know you did mention last week, they tried to trace the path from his back, and it went nowhere. But
they weren't able to go very far in it. Supposedly
Right.
that's what they said.
But his neck, the wound, is a little bit of a larger gash is because of the tracheotomy.
They actually did surgery to try to track too. So the
That's
neck
why
wound
that's
is bigger.
But the fact is, I mean, it's possible that single bullet went through.
I guess looking at that, you can see where the bullet went in and came out the neck.
Because it's at an angle, remember, it's not head on, it's at
It's
an
not
angle
head
from the
on.
book depository, because the road does curve.
I thought, I always kind of imagined the road was a little further down.
No, it's
But, yeah.
shoulder blade height practically. Plus he had a back brace
brace.
on that probably wouldn't have pierced it.
Is there a picture there that shows Conley in the front? Cause I saw a picture somewhere where you can see that
Yeah.
it's down like
Yeah.
that.
Just turn it around. Do you have it on there? Or should I- No, I can see it real fast.
There's that. There's,
We can get it set up there.
and then you can see here, gravity and action, you saw it turn.
You wanna get a
Yeah.
screen cap, Max, or do you have one of that photo we're talking about? I don't remember.
Sorry, I
I'm
never
not sure
sent
which
that
one it
one
was.
to
Right there.
you.
No, that's.
No, it's the actual picture and
I can get it to you real
it
quick
shows
while we're talking.
Conley,
'Cause he
down
does
like
turn
this.
back.
I can always put it up to the camera.
Yeah, you can do that, since we have it right here.
Yeah, if we can do it, pull it right
People,
here.
this other camera, Max, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
I know we're shooting all 10, 20 commands at you at one time, I apologize.
That's what we were doing to Jeremiah too, the whole
Do this
time.
camera, please.
Oh, back
Yeah,
camera,
I'm sorry.
That's my fault.
No, you're fine.
Doing all right, Ray?
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
So, Jason's gonna show you.
So this is,
You go
see
close
it.
you want, there you go. Kind of raise up the letters if you can. There you go. Go ahead,
so
Jason.
this is the photograph of Kennedy being hit from the back shot and the next shot coming out. And as you can see, Connolly right there turning and actually looking back. And he's already been shot himself, so he's screaming out in pain. And that's when Connolly's wife is saying they're gonna kill us all. She's heard screaming that.
And where's she at on the side
No,
somewhere?
She's sitting next to Connolly.
She's sitting pretty close to where Jackie Kennedy's sitting, in front of her.
Now, prior to this shot, this is right as Kennedy was being hit. Sorry, guys. This is right as he was getting hit. So this is right before the turning of Connolly, right there. And then it just goes down to Connolly turning and getting hit too, because he's reacting to him himself getting hit.
So, I mean, like, look, the pictures we had shown, you can take that off, sorry, Max. Go back to the camera if you would. So with that in mind, what if that really did happen? I mean, what if that single bullet did all that damage because of the type of bullet it was? What if it was a sniper rifle that's made to go through multiple people, like shred people, not explode on impact, but fragment, but also just to pierce things?
But that's just the one shot.
Yeah.
The one shot.
Right. Which is gonna,
Was it? Was this rifle that was found? Was that the proper sniper rifle that was found?
hard to say. Now, there is a theory also too now that says about, instead of 3 shots, what if there was a 4th shot? Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, what about the? So you have the wounds, right?
Mhm.
You have the wounds from Kennedy
Right.
to Connolly, and it lodges in his leg.
Right.
Did it come out?
No, the one on his leg, remember, they found it in his, well,
Okay.
they found
So
it in him.
what's the windshield mark?
Well, show mark.
Aha. Yes, the
Aha.
actual windshield in front of them actually had a gunshot wound, had a blast to
bleeding.
it. So there's actually scratches to it.
But there's multiple, you have pictures of that or something?
I do.
All right, let's see.
I do. Hey,
Sorry.
you guys keep talking, I will find that. Here it is.
But what if it's from a different,
I will find that. Here it
what if it's
is.
from a different actual gun, like wound? I mean, a
Right.
gun wound, I mean gun,
See, I got you. talking
actual
about
gun shots, sorry.
So here we
But
go.
there was more than just 3 shots.
So this right here, this is a screenshot of This is from a newspaper, not a screenshot. This is back in the old days of newspapers, of what is a gunshot nick to the windshield. Now,
Can you point it out, what is the,
Actual gunshot.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
actual,
Right.
It's like the rear view mirror is
you
here,
see,
and it's
yeah,
like
you
right
see the rear view
here.
mirror just right up here, and it's right here. So it's up ahead, it's above, so it's high. Now, Now people did. Now you also have the gentleman who was struck by debris or what possibly was fragment of a bullet back over by the bridge, by the underpass. So the cars are coming toward him, and he gets nicked in the face, and there's even the bullet mark on the ground. There's even like what looks like a bullet mark. I mean, forensics even say, well, it looks like a bullet mark. And he's got the scratch across his face. There's just a bystander.
Right.
Which, we have pictures of that too that I can even show you too of that. But
Which would have to have been fired away from the building,
it was,
From
yeah,
the building, you mean?
from,
opposite direction.
well, it
It'd
could
be
have,
from the building.
coming from the building, because the
To-
building's looking down, the cars are going this way, and the underpass is just straight ahead. There's a bystander standing over by the underpass who gets nicked by something. But what nicks the windshield? What the hell was that?
Well, even Jake, his biggest problem is that with the rifle is that it was a bolt action and the total time of shots was very short, no scope and a moving target, not impossible, but really improbable.
Right. And the thing is, though, we talked about it a little bit last week, and I'm actually going to hear from some of that discussion, but we talked about it, that there's people who are reporting and hearing as many as up to 6 shots. So if that is the case, you have one, when we have an eyewitness who supposedly they interviewed and they said, yeah, we heard 3 kind of a thing, who worked at the book depository, happened to be out in front that day watching this. She heard what sounded like a firecracker, looked down and saw sparks by the car where it hit the ground. The actual bullet hit the ground, and maybe that was one of them that ricocheted,
Well,
hit the guy under the underpass,
my issue
or another shot happened. Yes, sir. Chris.
is with the anatomy now, because I'm thinking about anatomy. Now, it is possible for it to go in at the very top, more towards the center of his shoulder blades and come out the base of his throat, basically.
Right.
That angle's not too unbelievable.
Right.
But if you know anatomy and you know the middle of your back, that's where everything comes together.
Right.
I mean, you get the bones and the spinal cord and everything is just right there. You got the collarbone in front of it.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that with this bolt action rifle,
Right.
with one bullet, it went into his back, out his throat, through someone's back, through their nipple, into their wrist, out their wrist, into their leg, and stayed. But the second shot just chipped the windshield.
I didn't say that. He said that.
No, I never said that it chipped. I said, what the hell chipped the windshield?
Well, I'm saying
don't know.
if it was
the,
from
the first shot had to have been a miss.
Yeah.
Because they all say that they heard that, in video, you see Kennedy wave and then he stops and he looks.
He recognizes this. And this
okay, but
happened, right?
that's what I'm saying. So you're telling me if they were made from the same rifle, that one of the bullets was able to go through 2 people multiple times, but one of the shots just nicked a windshield. It didn't go through the windshield.
Nobody talks about
it
the
didn't
windshield. Nobody talks about the windshield,
Right.
but they do talk about the bystander from the first shot, possibly the first shot, getting nicked over by the underpass. But no one talks about the windshield. You know why? Because shortly after the assassination, the car was ordered to be totally refurbished and cleaned and wipe out basically any evidence. I mean, why would you do that? Why would anybody order that? Who ordered that? Well, that was Lyndon Johnson who ordered that car to be cleaned.
Well, and wouldn't you take metal detectors out there to see if you could find bullets?
Who was the like?
I mean, well, I would say that
I'd do it.
FBI and,
The
everybody.
FBI's not involved though. It's the CIA. So
Well,
they,
It was state and
yeah, but it should be whoever's investigating to see if there's extra bullets out there. Wouldn't it make sense to take out metal detectors?
but what if you were trying to cover things up and
Well,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying, if you're trying to do it right.
If you
Right.
weren't covering it up,
okay,
You
what
would
about?
do, yeah.
Then why would you leave 3? Well, like I told you guys last week. What if there was only 2 shell casings up in the 6th floor, and then a few days later a third one magically appeared? Why would you leave those there if you were trying to hide everything?
because the first report only said 2, and then a few
I
days
mean, why would
later.
you leave why would
Because
you leave
they're
the casings
leaving,
behind?
they want certain evidence found and they want other
Oswald
evidence
does?
not.
hiding in plain sight.
Well, I'm
That's
not,
what I'm saying. Why would there be even the if you're trying to kill the president and get away with it, why would you leave casings there in the first place?
Well,
If you know you fired three shots, why would you collect them and get the hell out of there, hide the gun better, and leave?
right.
Unless you want to be found, but not, maybe not Oswald, maybe somebody else.
Well, it's obvious to me that Oswald, I mean, how did they know within 40,
45
50
minutes.
minutes? Yeah, that he left, he went home, he changed, there was a cop murdered,
Yeah.
and then he went to the show, and they knew everybody knew what he looked like and where he was.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
No, I don't.
It's Texas. It's the best police work in the world. I'm sorry. That's probably mean, but it's true.
You know, if
For
he
this
done-
case, it was.
But
If
I
he
was,
didn't
yeah.
do it, though, I would hate to be him. Like, oh man, I'm late for my movie. I'm gonna go see my movie now. Then I get in there and the cops come in. I'm like, oh, well, they found my pot or something like that.
But
And-
it was. I mean, he and
I mean, why go watch a movie? Why not get the hell out of town, like he supposedly was trying to do? with
Right?
the-
Like
It-
I would have
it
been
was-
in
it was-
Washington by then.
was he
I mean,
so
get out of there.
No, he was trying
when
to
officer well he went back to his boarding house, and then his landlord heard the car pull up and the honk. When she looked out, she saw a squad car pulling away from in front.
Right.
Why was the cop doing that? Was it Officer Tippett? Don't know. But who was that police officer? Why was the honk done? And right after that happened, Oswald abandons his suitcase that he was packing, grabs his pistol, walks out, and heads down the road. That's when Officer Tippett stops him. Supposedly he shoots Officer Tippett, but then eyewitnesses also claim that there's a second gunman there, who is the one who, and it was a bigger guy who was not Oswald, who shoots Officer Tippett, and they run in opposite directions of each other. Was there a meeting place that Oswald was supposed to meet up with? There was somebody he was supposed to meet up with, and did he panic? Did he freak out? That's why he's darting in and out of storefronts and stuff like that before going over to the theater and running in. Maybe the theater was his place that he had to get to hide out until everything calmed down. Who
Right.
knows? Maybe that was the case. But it was all tipped off, and next thing you know, he's getting arrested and he's hollering out, "This is it," because he knew, well, shit, this happened to me.
Yeah, because
Okay.
why else would you say this is it? He had to have been a part of it.
And why does he
You
keep
know.
why does he keep saying during the whole time, I'm just a patsy?
I'm just a patsy.
I really believe, personally, I said this is my own personal belief, I think he knew of assassination attempt. I think he was the fall guy.
Exactly.
And the fact that it happened, he's like, oh shit, that's gonna be placed blame on me.
Well,
And
could they have said, I mean, I'm talking about the actual people who set this all up, told him, hey, you know, they'll arrest you, but they'll never be able to prove that you did it, so we're gonna put you in that position. And, you know, they're not gonna be able to prove that you ever did it.
Or the fact that, you know, I mean, like we said before, and it's known, he was seen moments before the shooting eating his lunch, and moments after the shooting, he is seen still in the cafeteria drinking a soda. He may have brought the gun, he may have taken it up there, somebody else did the shooting, and why did he leave? Maybe because that was part of his thing. Maybe that was part of his job. He was there, he delivered it, it happened, he walked out.
Well, and maybe they said, well, your fingerprints, they won't find them on the gun, so
Sure.
they'll be able to clear you so you can walk away.
they didn't find him on the gun. There was none on the gun up to a certain point until the FBI or CIA went in there to the morgue, which we can play that video next. That's video B, where it talks about them going in there and spending some time with the body after the fact. I'm actually gonna pull up here just a second. I don't know if we'll be able to hear it in studio, so.
That's all right, as long as the guests can.
Did they ever interview Conley? Was there ever a interview with him on this?
He just said he got shot. I mean, because
That was it.
What do you know? I was shot.
I don't think he had any kind of involvement in it. I think he was just
Yeah.
sitting duck, like, because there's more to that too. They think that supposedly, once we get into the video, you keep referring to once we talk about that person, the orders supposedly were given to this person to say, you know, the women are saved. Go for the men only. So that's why Conley was hit also, not by intentionally, but mostly JFK was the guy they wanted. Couldn't play the
Collateral
video.
damage,
Yeah.
yeah.
Play the video.
Go to play this.
I can play that in the studio here this way.
Government documents show the assassination rifle was shipped back to Dallas on Sunday, November 24th, 1963, and that an FBI team spent a long time in the mortuary with Oswald's body the next day. Paul Grudy, the funeral home director, said years later that he was there when the FBI put that rifle in Oswald's dead hand. I had trouble getting the fingerprint ink off his hands in time for the burial, he said. Yet a blurry palm print belatedly produced by a Dallas police officer and identified as belonging to Oswald was instrumental in convincing the public of his guilt.
About that. That the funeral person actually had a hard time getting the ink off of Oswald's dead hand because the
Well, I
FBI.
want to know why the FBI was in there to begin with when, I mean, this whole time you guys were saying that it wasn't the FBI, it was the CIA. Like,
I
because
don't
that's
know.
what's supposed to, that was the story, that was from the CIA, that was where all the issues were
Right.
coming from.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, oh, the FBI went in there and did it instead.
The only thing I can think of maybe if somebody mistook them for the FBI.
Probably had
the
FBI
CIA,
jackets.
like their credentials, you know, whatever. I mean, it just adds to the story. I don't really know that part of it as far as that goes, but yeah, this mortician said that he saw these government officials come in with the rifle, spend some time with the actual corpse.
Why would they bring the rifle?
Well, they need evidence.
Yeah, they needed
I
the
mean,
evidence.
but put the rifle, take it into the morgue with the body.
There's,
I mean,
there,
there's no
there,
reason.
there's no reason other than to plant evidence.
Absolutely.
There's no there's no
Absolutely.
other reason why to do that.
Yeah,
There wasn't, to see whether or not his hand can fit a trigger.
no.
There's no other reason
If
to
the
do
glove
it.
doesn't fit, you must.
That's the wrong case.
Oh, wrong one, guys.
His hand was
Um,
too big to fit, okay.
30 years later.
So, Jake just said that everything that he read said that the rifle didn't have a scope. But in the video, the rifle had a scope. And from what I'm seeing here, actual evidence photos, it does have a scope.
The one that they want to present to the public,
Is that a 270?
supposedly there's a possibility of 3 different rifles that were presented. And as you can see, the one, there's always a famous photograph of them holding the rifle up, of course, and the guy's not even holding, wearing gloves or anything like that. He's just holding it up. But he has it, and it has a scope to it. But supposedly there is the possibility of 3 different rifles that were presented. One doesn't have a scope. Other 2 do. And all 3 of them are different guns.
And that's a pretty
Different
difficult
types
shot
of
without a
rifles
scope.
too. So, so do we know the truth? No. Of which one, and which rifle and how it was used? No. But why was the FBI or CIA, whoever it was, why were they going into the morgue with Oswald's dead body, and why were they bringing that rifle with them?
There was no sense.
No sense other than to actually put a print on there. And like they said, the mortician said, it took him forever to get that ink, almost couldn't even get the ink off of his hand before the burial.
Okay, ink for what?
For
Fingerprints.
fingerprints.
Right.
They went in there and
So they could put it on the gun?
To supposedly, well, I mean, we weren't there, but I mean,
we weren't there, but
maybe to match fingerprints up to what's on the gun already.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to say.
Well,
There's no official report that says that unless it's sealed.
I can see taking his fingerprints.
Right.
I can see
But
that.
not
I
with the
mean, that-
rifle in
But they
hand.
should have already done that, and they didn't need to go in there with the dead body. They had his fingerprints on file, supposedly. I mean, when they arrested the man, they
Well,
should have
yeah.
They should have already done that.
Should
They
have
should have.
fingerprinted him right there.
Yeah.
Doing your Miranda rights.
I mean,
Well, they did
They
it
should
with
have.
the fingerprints on him, on the gun. That was the easiest way to seal the deal.
I mean, if you think about it, yeah.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have needed the ink.
Why were they spending time with the dead body?
Well,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Why did they take the gun
I
Why-
mean, there's no
why-
reason to take the gun in with the body.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense,
No.
and that part's always baffled me, it just shows more guilt towards the US government trying to cover something up possibly, or whoever's behind it.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't
So-
government officials, I don't know.
Maybe they were just wearing the fancy FBI jackets and
Yeah,
they
just
were
part
really
of the
part of
mob.
something else.
Yeah, I
Who
mean,
Could be.
knows?
Or they could have just walked in, not wearing anything. I mean, I don't know. I don't think they wore the actual, letters back then. But, on their stuff, they could have just said, we're FBI, we're going in.
Yep.
Just to throw off whoever was there, the mortician or staff or, we don't know.
Yeah, because you would think the FBI would be smart enough to not be that blatant, I mean, people talk, so.
But when you're in the midst of trying to cover up a major situation in the U.S., you do what you can, right?
So what
Well,
we need to
So
do.
go from there.
if you want.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we're getting close to, we'll probably take a break here in a few minutes, I think,
Okay.
just so we can kind of go on to the next phase, because when we come back from the break, we'll talk about a couple different things as far as the bullets themselves. Possibly a new lead in the case, well, not a new lead, but a lead in the case that somebody who admits to actually being involved in this assassination. And just some other things, a couple different angles we never really thought about, I've never thought about until recently. So, you want to take us out to go to break, Jake? Or Jake? You talked about Jake earlier.
My name's Jake.
My name's Jake.
I'm from State Farm.
Or
so,
Jeff.
so are you saying a different angle that you just recently started thinking
We
about?
talked about.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm not going off the rails.
Surprise.
Okay, I thought you were
I did
going
it.
for
I
reals.
wasn't born, shit.
Yeah, you
Sure.
were.
He was.
These two were. Or at least this one was.
Where were you in 1963?
I was not here.
Or were you?
69.
Alright.
Thought that was
6 years later.
1869.
Lincoln? Want to take us out and give us,
Yeah,
give
break
us,
time.
give us a commercial going or something? Couple commercials? I was gonna something. Sorry.
Look at those videos on your own time.
Well, now we're trying to see how we would go from there.
Okay.
Shut your mouth. Go ahead. What?
Nope.
Oh, they're
go.
gonna say something. Oh. God, I'm so out of it. Sorry. One of the theories we were to talk about tonight. Well, let's talk about the bullets. I mean themselves. We talked about how there was the pristine bullet supposedly. That was found all after the surgery of Connolly, because Connolly went into surgery at the same time that Kennedy and all that stuff happened. So Connolly stuck around, of course, being from Texas. He didn't go back to. His body didn't get changed. He was still alive, but he didn't get changed to take him back to Washington D.C. like Kennedy did. He stayed there, did the surgery. They found an actual bullet there because they left a couple of CIA people around to try to find any kind of evidence. They were trying to find this bullet, and they did find one. And the bullet, everybody talks about the pristine bullet. Do we have a picture? Did you put a picture of that?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
We showed it a couple times last
I can't remember, but then I also saw that maybe the bullet wasn't as pristine as everybody thought. There was some marks on it, indentation, like on the one side of it. But they were able to pinpoint that bullet from Oswald's gun. Well, the gun that said was used by
That they
Oswald.
picked.
Yeah, the one that was found up there. So that bullet did match up. There is like on the very top of it, there's actual like a indentation in it.
Right. I mean, every bullet has that. Every time.
Not the
it's shot.
striations.
Not the striations.
No, on the actual top of the tip.
Like if you look at this one right
not
here,
from the end where yeah.
it's right here.
Yeah, you want to put that one up if you can. You can take a screen cap of that. Sorry. Not the striations. I know every gun has
Right.
markings that makes it unique to that gun. That's how they know it's from that gun, supposedly.
Gotcha.
Not necessarily by Oswald. But it's
No.
just not as pristine as everybody seems to make
Right
it
now,
out.
we're just saying that it was possibly fired from the rifle that was found.
Right. But it's not as pristine as everybody once thought it could be.
Right.
That one is actually out. Somebody has it. Like some guy owns that bullet, I guess.
Why do they allow people to
I
just
don't
buy
know.
this crap?
That doesn't make any sense. He's had it and he won't let anybody have it. I think it's that bullet. Maybe it's the other one we're talking about later on.
Right. But it's still,
Yeah,
I've
some guy
never,
has that bullet.
I've never known why people are allowed to buy certain pieces of history.
I think that bullet's actually on display somewhere, like Smithsonian or somewhere. I can't remember what that one is. But the other one we're talking about later. That one.
You have enough money, you can.
Government documents show the assassination rifle was shipped back to Dallas on Sunday, November 24th, 1963, and that an FBI team spent a long time in the mortuary with Oswald's body the next day. Paul Grudy, the funeral home director, said years later that he was there when the FBI put that rifle in Oswald's dead hand. I had trouble getting the fingerprint ink off his hands in time for the burial, he said. Yet a blurry palm print belatedly produced by a Dallas police officer and identified as belonging to Oswald was instrumental in convincing the public of his guilt.
Anything's possible, I guess.
Yeah.
That it could be the single shot. I would imagine that there's more damage to the bullet, but it's definitely not the bullet that hit the windshield of above.
Right, which
Doesn't make any sense to.
Well, where's that bullet then?
Yeah.
Nobody knows where that
Where's
bullet
that
is.
bullet, and where's the one that struck the bystander by the bridge?
Well, if
So
it was,
that's at least 4 shots.
well, if it was, just seeing a mark on the windshield is kind of not great evidence because you don't know if the chip's from the outside, you don't know it's from the inside, if it actually goes straight through. Because if
But
it was from
here's
the
the thing.
inside, it would be still in the car.
But there's photographs of it, though. Okay, no one talks about it, and you can't go back and do anything about it because the car was cleaned out and fixed of any damage and blood stains and everything. It was quickly done. So you will not have a chance to look at that and see where there's a possibility of a shot coming from which angle. Was it shot from the front?
Mhm.
Was that someone trying to get a headshot from the front that failed the first time before the failed shot was done at the very end? You don't know, and we can't, and we'll never know on that. So yeah,
And then they're counting the third shot, the one that got him in the side of the head.
back of the head, front of the head, side of the head, we don't know.
Yeah, I thought
Well,
that one came from the
Look,
front.
when I look at the
Right.
things, it looks like it's in the side, because this side blew out.
Now, if you go to my very last photograph that I sent you, this is at Parkland Hospital. This is the medical forensic
Medical examiner.
thank you, medical examiner, who makes the announcement to the world that the president is showing a wound to the temple right here. He's pointing right there. I mean, this has been a pretty obvious thing throughout history, that he's pointing right here. Now, this is before he's taken away back to Washington. Okay, so this is before he gets back on the plane and is shipped away. But he's telling it right here. And if you watch the video, you can tell he's very distressed. The whole crowd is very distressed because it had just happened. He's at the hospital. You got the crowd outside crying. But everybody, and he comes out and he says this. It's kind of like, in Roswell. Yes, we got UFOs that crashed. And, you got a military guy who's saying this, but yet then the military goes, oh, no, wait. Just the next day later, oh, no, that's not what you saw. Maybe, did they change their minds on this too? Like, oh, no, shit, we shouldn't have had you do that. We should have stopped you ahead of time and not told you that it came from the front. Because we want everybody to believe it came from the back, because his back of the head was where Oswald would have had a perfect shot.
Well, from the video, and everybody knows how an exit wound comes out, unless that bullet ricocheted inside and decided to come out here, then there had to have been another shot other than up through that window.
Now,
there has to be.
And a lot of the photographs that I've seen of the autopsy of Kennedy laying on the table, some of them say that they were doctored. Some of the images were doctored, or his actual body was actually tampered, either while he was on Air Force One flying, or as soon as they got back to the naval base and they took more photographs, that his body, there's wounds on the head and stuff like that, and maybe even more damage done to where it wouldn't pinpoint a certain direction, stuff like that. Possibility of his body being tampered with while they were working on it, just so they could prove a point in the directions of the bullet.
Well, there's also talk that the brain, when they weighed it, weighed less. Well, they weighed it at one point, and then whatever you said, doctoring, whatever, and then the actual brain that was given back to him was weighed less than what was taken out, supposedly. So, I mean, like somebody had taken bits and pieces of it, or removed something, or doctored it some way to where it fit whatever theory they were
came up with.
They were trying to write off.
And, it'd be nice to actually examine the brain today, but you can't, because it's missing. No one actually knows where it is today. It's one of those things that just disappeared. So you can't examine that either. Whatever what was left of his brain.
It wasn't on the back end of the car,
Some of it was in the car, some of it was on the back end of the car. There's photos of the vehicle where, after the fact, where the vehicle is all bloody and there's pink matter everywhere, which is brain matter. I mean, it's all over the back of the car, and it's chunks of it, like you'd expect it to look. Thing that's always baffled me too, when they did the actual official autopsy back in, I can't say the word, Bethesda? The medical center? Bethesda, whatever. Yeah. The FBI, I think it is, sent in 2 guys that never had any kind of training on this stuff or knowledge of this kind of thing to sit there and take witness and collect any evidence they could find.
They never worked a gunshot wound case in their career.
But yet they were chosen to handle the most delicate one of all.
Yeah.
I mean, and to figure out, and they were just as dumbfounded when they were taking out the report. I mean, they didn't know what they were doing.
No.
But yet they were.
Yeah, but yet they were
gifted this
for the president that was just shot.
Just a lot of weird things. Why not send somebody that has the most experience, the most knowledge, or the most expertise behind doing this to handle this case? But yet you're gonna send 2 guys pick off the street practically, and I mean, what's the worst they can do? They're coming to help their case. if they're trying to cover something up, that is. I don't know. It's the whole thing is just crazy. I mean, behind it. I don't know which angle we want to try next. I mean, there's like 10,000 ones we can try. I mean, I got like 3 or 4 sitting in front of me, so I don't know what you want to
But
know.
you know which one sounds more fun to you?
What about LBJ? Let's just dive into him. I mean, what was his involvement or not involvement? I don't know.
Well, like you mentioned last week, it was his state.
Right. He controlled everything from the courts.
Yeah, he controlled
police.
everything. He was the man in Texas. He was the vice president. The relationship between Kennedy and Johnson was not great
Right.
at all. I think we all knew that. I mean,
Yeah, we talked
anybody
about
who
that.
had my buddy's coming down.
Yeah, here's your friend.
It was always known that Kennedy always kind of gave Johnson the jobs that he didn't want to deal with.
Him and his brother said, Robert said, yeah, send LBJ in. 'Cause
Yep.
We don't want this job.
Yeah, so
Shit jobs.
you know, sorry for everybody who hears these weird noises behind me. I swear it's the cat behind me. You know?
Jason.
He could come hang out with anybody, but he chooses Jason.
There's no
all the
cat.
time.
There's no cat here.
But so you have that scenario. We were also going to the brink of war, possibly. You know, Kennedy was trying to get us away from Vietnam. It was not something that he felt that it was a good thing for us. There's the scenario or thought that possibly the government or military officials wanted to go to war. Because war was at the time, an $80 billion investment for the country if you go to war. So why not? But Kennedy didn't want to, so LBJ may have wanted to sign off on that, say, you know, you get me in the office and I'll give you that war. You know, that's one of the scenarios from the movie that the movie JFK, Oliver Stone's movie, talks about. The possibility that Lyndon Johnson met with all the generals and they all agreed upon and said, hey, let's do this. We get you in office, we go to war, we make that money, we make campaigns, we make ourselves great.
Okay, so we're going that theory. It's the CIA, it's the mob, it's LBJ,
Well, didn't
and
really say
it's
the mob.
and
That-
it's
we're
the
just-
military that
We're
all.
just talking about LBJ and the military, you know, talking about going to war. You know, mafia, that could be just a side thing. You know, I mean, there's definitely different angles and probably enough connections to make some things happen. You know, I mean, of course, you don't want top officials making that judgment call or pull the trigger. But if you have all these other people plan it out, make it, you just get the go or you get the green light, and all these people could just make it happen.
But in that scenario, it'd have to be at least the CIA, maybe the FBI, and the military, and LBJ.
I don't know if the FBI would be involved as much as everybody would wish they were. Cause
Well, if they're the
they're-
ones who took the rifle into the.
I'm
sorry.
Sorry.
Massage time.
Every show he comes. You know, that's what at least you know. We don't know if it was FBI. The video did say FBI. Mortician may have said FBI, but were they? We don't know.
But I'm just putting it together. I'm just saying that if we go with the LBJ theory, that you have to go with the say it was the FBI. They came in, showed the credentials. The FBI, CIA, military, and LBJ. That would in time.
That's a possibility.
That theory. On that theory.
There's a
Right.
possibility of all that. Because, I mean, the moment Johnson gets in office, what does he do? Changes the whole direction of the country. We go to war. It was just like, not even a question. Just signed it, we win. You
Well,
know,
we were already-
I mean, everything was just looking bad.
We're already there.
But the country,
Yeah, we were already there.
But the president was actually trying, you know, Kennedy was actually trying to not let that happen.
LBJ
was not wanting.
escalated.
But yeah,
They called Kennedy soft.
yeah,
LBJ was like, "Oh, gonna do it," you know,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And
that Texas.
right.
You know,
Yeah, and Kennedy kept us out of the thing with
Well, and it sounds like maybe they were
Castro.
killing, that saying of killing two birds with one stone, because
Right.
if they got Kennedy out of there, he was already getting ready to start, cleaning the swamp type thing with the
Right.
mafia, the CIA, all that. So then you talk about the war. If you put Johnson in there, that takes care of multiple.
Yep.
I mean, it makes sense.
It gets rid. It gets rid
It
of.
gets-
It stops the investigation of getting rid of the CIA.
Yep,
Stops the mafia attack. It stops
yep.
all this. It
And
does.
the
It does
government
halt
gets their
everything.
money. They
And we
get their-
focus more on the war. We
Yeah.
focus everything on that.
Interesting. It sucks that we'll never know.
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
and then you got the letters coming out that Trump's releasing, or that back in 1992 Bush put the law in effect that due to the JFK, here we go again, the JFK movie caused such a interest again in this case as much as it's always been, but so he put this law into effect 25 years from 1992 that we're going to release all these documents, and there's
October 2017, it was going to be released
And some
by
of the-
George H.W. Bush.
Yeah. Some of the what he did put in there, the president at the 25 years from now can say he can change that if he wants to, but obviously Trump's an egomaniac, so
So he
He'll-
made it all of his, saying,
he said,
"I
"Yeah, I'm
did it."
releasing all these
But
documents."
what's the big deal about all the documents? Because most of it's marked out anyway.
I
So
know.
who
That's just
cares?
it. That's
I
what it's
mean,
gonna be.
That's
what-
what. That's
I would
what-
be almost embarrassed to say, "Oh, I did." I've
Well,
got.
as
I
you
mean,
can
when
say-
you take when everything's marked out.
Well,
I mean,
as
let's
you
go
can,
on.
as you can see,
Right.
he did shut up. He hasn't mentioned it since.
Right.
Because
Well, and
everything
it's no
did
big
come
deal.
in. No,
It's like, who
but we were
cares?
supposed to be getting all these new files.
Yep.
But once again, the public, we don't get it.
Right.
We get everything, like you said, blacked out,
It's blacked
cut.
out.
I mean, once again, what is this? What is
Who
this
cares?
crap?
Okay, well, here's the thing. With some of them that have been released already over the years, I've looked into some of them already and read them. One of them, there was a memo, because right after the whole JFK
He's thinking
assassination.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
I'm hungry, and I'm just kidding. After JFK assassination, I put the JFK and assassination together. JFA. There's a memo from J. Edgar Hoover, who is FBI, as we all know,
And a vacuum.
to LBJ that says the KGB is pinpointing LBJ as the ringleader. So that's one of oh Jesus Christ, Jason, come on. Anyway, the letter from J. Edgar Hoover to LBJ, based upon what the KGB had said, that they're pinpointing LBJ as a ringleader. There's also one from the French intelligence in a letter to Jackie Kennedy that was written, and it's also in a book called Farewell to Arms. They also pinned LBJ as a ringleader in all this. So if you got things like that already happening, what is the rest of the documents that we've never seen? What are they saying? Now, some of the stuff I read, there's stuff in there about Martin Luther King. That was released in this whole spiel of letters that says that he would, I guess, lived a very sexual, active life. Like all these campaigns, all those marching and stuff they were doing, whatever they were doing, they had these elaborate parties, and they were basically, there was all kinds of debauchery going on and stuff. Because some guy went there, I can't remember his name, what his allegiance to, he said something about it disturbed him how bad all the sexuality, like the homosexuality going on during these parties, and just everything going on, the drugs and alcohol and the partying was going on. It disturbed him to see this is, from coming from such a reverend person, but this is all hearsay. I mean, I don't know, we weren't there for it, but the fact that they're painting Martin Luther King as different light, I mean, what's the rest of the documents going to say? I mean, it just makes you wonder, maybe that's why they're trying to hide everything for, because like I said, originally they're supposed to come out in 2029, so most of the people that were involved possibly would long gone and dead, or, whatever. Now, the thing that always really baffled me about the whole thing was, this is what's ironic about it. George H.W. Bush puts that law in 1992. But on the day of the actual assassination, he kept saying, years later, he didn't remember where he was at that day. I don't know where he was at. He wasn't part of the CIA at that point, which that's what he became later on. He became part of the CIA. He was just a politician trying to get, make his mark on in Dallas and Texas, all that area. But he kept saying, years later when they asked him, where were you at on this day? He's like, I don't know where I was at, I can't remember. Trying to alluding to the question. But there's records of him on that day saying he actually made a phone call that day. He wasn't in Dallas. He was actually in Tyler, Texas, which is close to Dallas. He made a phone call, just kind of in a way establishing an alibi, we'll say, where it says he called them and said, I'm here in Tyler, Texas. You know, like I can't remember. This is 3 minutes of the assassination. This is when this happened. He's making a phone call back to Washington or wherever, you know, saying I'm in Tyler, Texas. But there's this guy named James Parrott. You may want to look at, you know, down in Houston. So they're like, what? So they ran down to Houston, obviously, but there's a whole phone call. He keeps going, did I mention I'm in Tyler, Texas? For no reason, just say I'm in Tyler, Texas. But you know, hey, by the way, I'm in Tyler, Texas, just so that, you know, I can get that whole alibi angle going. Well, they find out. FBI swoops down to this place and they find James Parrott, and James Parrott is in a backyard making signs, and it's in support of Bush. For, you know, Bush for governor or Bush for whatever, mayor or whatever. I can't remember what it was Bush for. Oh, it was Bush for U.S. Senate. So when they come up rushing upon this James Parrott character, he's like, "Whoa, what's going on, guys? You know, I'm just here." So why would Bush throw his own guy under the bus, we'll say? But he's also saying, you know, here I am, and I'm in Tyler, Texas. Do this, do that. Go look for this guy down here. Oh, and by the way, I'm in Tyler, Texas. This over and over. He's trying to repeat himself. That way he's distancing himself from whatever's happening in Dallas 3 minutes later. So what does that
That's
mean?
weird.
That makes no sense. But he wasn't part of anything yet. He wasn't part of the CIA. Later on, he became part of the CIA. But he wasn't involved with CIA yet. He was just a guy trying to run for senator in the state of Texas. I mean, it was just a little bit. It may not be connected at all, but it's ironic the fact that he's even making this phone call 3 minutes before the assassination happens. And all he wants to get out there is, hey, there's this one guy down here to look at, but hey, I'm in Tyler, Texas. I'm nowhere near that scene. It's just a weird occurrence. But then that's why I didn't understand why in '92 the same Bush would go and say, you know, hey, we can open the documents up in 25 years. It's just a weird twist to the story that I've never seen until I started doing all this research on it for those episodes. And then I find this, I'm like, well, that's weird. That makes no sense.
Maybe it was a bigger picture, like I don't know, like a Illuminati almost, like
Right.
a bigger picture, being like, okay, you're gonna do this, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna get off me, and you know, things like that. So
That's
maybe
what
he
it's almost
wasn't-
looking like.
Yeah, so maybe he wasn't, you know, a part of anything yet, but the plan was that he was
It's
going
all
to
to the
be.
road.
It's like maybe it was all through
Excuse me.
this agreement, this agreement, this agreement. This is what's going to happen. Are you in it? Are you not?
I bet
Are
they
you
have
in it?
hats.
Huh?
I bet they all have hats,
10-gallon hats.
like members only hats.
What? We kind of touched base about this last week. Also touched base on this. We said in I think you asked me what the laws were as far as Texas back then involving LBJ. It said murder in 1963 is only a state crime, not a federal one. But LBJ controlled the Dallas police, the DA office, the judges. He controlled the whole state. So if he was the ringleader behind it, well, he's never gonna get charged for it because he controls them all. So big deal. I mean, and it's not a federal crime, and this is a federal president. You know, so it's if there's a murder in his state, he can override anything.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Roger Stone, which he was Trump's campaign advisor, which take that with a grain of salt if you want to. He's also a political consultant, a lobbyist, and a strategist. But he also does a podcast and stuff. He swears up and down OBJ is the guy that did it. He said he wrote a book about it, and his angle is he says that he can link. Well, I'll read the book's called "The Man Who Killed Kennedy: The Case Against LBJ." He says LBJ is a psychopath. He said I told you this about this guy before. He said he can link LBJ to 15 murders prior to Kennedy's alone. That he had his hand in, maybe not doing it himself, but setting it up. Basically, what all these murders did, they cover up corruption and voter theft. There's a couple cases here I'll talk about. One was there's a guy named Henry Marshall who was an agricultural agent in Texas at the time. He was actually looking into LBJ and another guy named Billy Sol Estes on a kickback scandal. He was looking into this. He was about ready to break some kind of news on this thing right before the whole assassination, or soon around the assassination. Basically, he was found dead on his own ranch, and the coroner called it a suicide. However, it says this guy Marshall was shot 5 times with a bolt-action rifle. So how can you commit suicide with a bolt-action rifle 5
Everything
times?
happens with a bolt-action rifle.
5 times though. And his guy was getting ready to break a case against LBJ and this other guy.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then there's another scam called the Bobby Baker scam where LBJ was supposed to collect millions of dollars on, or this guy was collecting $1 million on behalf of LBJ. That these two cases that were getting ready to break prior to the assassination or soon after, and then Kennedy's gone and LBJ controls everything and he's president now. So I mean, that's one angle that everybody says that LBJ had his hand in it. And like I said, you also got the KGB saying that he had a hand in it, and you also got the French intelligence saying he had a hand in it. It just makes weird sense, and that's why going back to the picture with Jackie Kennedy on the plane, or when they're swearing in LBJ and you see her in the blood-soaked dress. That's why she didn't take it off, because she said, "You bastards killed my husband." So it's kind of a slap in the face.
crazy.
I mean, you got all these weird angles, conspiracy. Other than who was? Oh yeah, Oswald. That's right. 3 times. All right, 3 bullets.
Right.
But here we got all these other different angles and different stories.
He was perfect with shooting the president with 3 shots.
Calmly walking out of
But
the building.
yet, he just blatantly kills a police officer, is running aimlessly amongst, I mean, it's just like, he wasn't panicked during the shooting,
Right.
but yet he's a panicked, loose cannon running amongst the streets and attacks a police officer as they come rushing into him at the theater.
Yeah. And yet he doesn't know why he's being arrested.
Nope.
Never makes mention of it.
Well, but see, he could dress that all up though.
Right. Very true.
But why calmly leave a building that? I mean, if you're gonna do that, get the hell out of there. Why go home? Why go to a movie theater? Why not get the hell out of the state as far as you can?
Why not get into the car? Why not buy a ticket to take the bus somewhere out of town? Why not go meet? But no, he goes home. He goes to pack his clothes, almost like he was meant to go meet someone or
Right.
go to a destination. But the honk at the outside, he leaves. He's kind of in a panic. It's almost like you got the signal like, hey, it's on you now.
Yep.
Or something. Or plan 2, go meet so-and-so here. And then when the officer shooting happened, that's when it goes even worse for him. Because he takes off and he's rushing around and looking all panic-like. But yet he just did the perfect shooting from a 6-story building. From the 6th floor of a building.
And according, what you said was that the reason they suspected him, he was the major suspect, was because they did a roll call and he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so,
Book Depository Building did a roll call shortly after, within the 30 minutes of the shooting. They did a roll call. He's the only employee of, I don't know, a handful of people that were working that day that did not show up at the roll call when he was just seen in the cafeteria twice by witnesses and the manager himself, who saw him drinking a soda in there just shortly after the shooting, and he wasn't there. So immediately, he's the one, and let's go get him.
and they knew exactly where to go.
Here's his description. Here's his name. Go get him. And it was all over the place, and they had it already posted. I mean, it was a store clerk who was working in one of the shops who noticed this weird guy who was weaving in and out of the buildings, hiding and stuff. Looked suspicious to him, so he was just like, "Oh, that's him." Walks out, goes and gets the first police officer. It's like, "Over there. Oh man, that's our guy." Whole squad right there, and then you got the news and everybody already there, ready to go for the arrest. It was just
Too perfect.
too perfect in my mind. It is.
Oh, I mean, there's no way, I mean, to go to the movie, all these people recognized him when they probably never even, I mean, they wouldn't have got the picture out or that quick anyway. And none of it makes sense. It doesn't make sense.
It's not like today with the internet or that, quickly you can get a story. I mean, 45 minutes to 50 minutes they had him already pinpointed and arrested. That's some pretty damn good police work at that time.
And had him convicted.
Right. So
they were convicted.
once again, he's the man. History already has him.
So what you're saying is our 36th president did it.
Don't know.
Maybe. Never had
But-
his hand in it.
So we got 30 minutes.
Right.
Let's go with
Okay.
some of the new stuff that's
Yep.
come out.
Well, there was a guy that we kind of found out watching this video, not the same guy you're thinking of yet, but that police officer that joined 2 months before this assassination happened. Roscoe White, there's a picture of him on there if you want to put him on, you can, it's not a big deal. But there's this police officer he's dead now. He's ex-military. Out of nowhere, this guy joins the Dallas Police Force 2 months prior to this, and then he keeps a diary about, that's Roscoe White on there. There's reports that this might have been the guy that either pulled up, honked the horn possibly, or was one of the guys that shot Tippett. That's one angle, but the reason why he's such an interesting case, he's the only other person in history that has admitted to supposedly killing Kennedy, or fired a shot supposedly. He kept a diary, allegedly, of all the events leading up to this and to the actual event itself. However, he ends up dying years, I can't remember, I think he got sick, I think he died. But it's his wife and son that find the diary and bring it out years later after the fact. They're the one that pinpointing that he's one of them that maybe got involved. It's just ironic that he joins all of a sudden the police force 2 months prior to, and he's maybe had a hand in it somehow. Like he came by the house, possibly gave a signal to Oswald, but there's no merit to it other than the fact that the wife, them, and the son are saying that yes, we think he did it. But we'll never know once again because he's long gone too.
Well, why would you want your husband known for maybe possibly, I mean,
I don't know. Well, I mean, bring it to today's terms, think about BTK and his wife. I mean,
Yeah.
she had no idea that he
Yeah,
lived
but-
a double life, and
No.
she's distanced herself. I mean, I know.
why would they want it brought out?
Unless something that they feel guilty that
Exactly.
history. No, I mean they feel guilty that we know who did it. Possibly, this is what we have. This is why we think it.
Because, I mean, you wouldn't want to.
I wouldn't want that notoriety from
I
any of my
wouldn't
family
either,
members.
so-
But if you could help solve, put the pieces, and maybe say, hey, Oswald didn't do it, or
It's a major
Had
piece of
help.
history.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see their take of it, but they just basically found this diary that he kept.
well, if they didn't truly believe it, I don't think they'd probably do it. I mean,
That's true,
pretty
too.
much.
And why is he writing about that? That's the crazy thing.
yeah, I don't
Why
know.
would he just make up the writing on that?
Unless he was making a story, writing a story.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it doesn't
I have
make
no clue.
sense for
Yeah, it doesn't.
if you're not. I don't know.
But we do have another guy that we kind of
Weird.
got us going more recently. His name is James File. Now, certain conspiracy theorists that are really heavy into this think discredit this guy. I mean, they say he's just a wacko. But we watched a video recently about him, and if this guy's making up the story
It's a documentary that came out.
this summer, it's called JFK. I killed JFK. Whatever is what it's called. I killed JFK. It's by Barry Katz, and they did a documentary about this guy. This guy is a prisoner. He spent 30 years in prison. He got out last year, 2016, but he did a couple interviews back in 1993 and I think 2004, I think it was, or 3 or something like that, where he has a fascinating story behind him where he says he fired the fourth shot from the grassy knoll, which is the one that everybody sees supposedly with the headshot where his head explodes.
The fatal shot.
Right, the fatal shot. His story is, I mean, I don't know. If you watch him, I kept watching his demeanor and his mannerisms, and for somebody who's lying about this, he sure knows an awful lot about the case. He knows things that the FBI and the CIA, everybody that nobody's ever been told, that he's actually mentioned, and that when he says it, they find out this stuff is true. I don't know. What do you guys think about that whole angle? We can go into some of those facts.
My thought on the whole thing was, he reminded me a lot of Charles Manson
Oh,
in there. He just, so for sure of himself.
Animated.
I did, yeah, he's
Oh,
very, yeah. But what got me to believe in the stuff that he said, and you can't believe anybody. Nobody
Right.
still, even after we leave tonight, nobody will still know. It's your own opinion.
Sure.
But to me, I would like to have some faith in the FBI, okay, or the CIA. And after they went in and actually investigated some of the stuff that he was saying, and there was one part in the film where they, only one time did they think that he could possibly be lying, because in the documentary they say that he's not. You know, that they checked everything. Was that one time when they went back in, remember, and they checked on the records to see who had come in that day to see him, that visited him and asked him the questions, and they went back and checked the log that day, and they were like, holy crap, yeah, they did show up to talk to him. That right there made me kind of believe a lot of what he is saying could possibly be true. But then again, our whole government, CIA, FBI, it's been proven in the last 3 months that it's so jacked up and they're lying to everybody. Who knows now?
Well,
But I found what he said,
It could be
it's
years
for
ago.
life,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, but for what he said, and if I wanted to believe in the FBI, the CIA, it could be true. And it's amazing documentary. Everybody needs to watch it.
What I found out just watching this and watching, like you said, his demeanor, and it was his storytelling.
Yeah.
He was bringing up people's names,
Yeah.
their locations, who was all there. I mean, he was talking about not just himself, he's talking about several different individuals who were high up there in even the mafia or government
Right.
that were, there's, what, 2 people, at least one gentleman who was flying into Dallas to call off the killing.
Right.
That was going to do that, but he didn't really have enough power to say cancel it, because everybody else who was involved, including File himself, the plan of motion was already, the plan was already in motion so much that they were like, nope, we're doing it whether you like it or not, we're doing it.
Yeah, because could you imagine if you'd stopped and then the head guy comes down and says you were going to stop it because of this guy? I mean, there would have been hell to pay.
Yeah, there's so much.
What was his involvement? I mean,
Okay.
why would he?
He was,
He was a hitman hired by the Chicago mob.
yeah.
That, once again, going back to the angle of Kennedy and the mob, that supposedly had ties to the mob to even get elected. Remember this? That they were supposed to be taken care of. The mob was supposed to be, fine. There was going to be nothing that's going to affect them at all down the road. And then Kennedy and his brother all of a sudden, after the election, says, no, we're getting rid of the mob and all this stuff.
What was he in prison for?
He and another friend, do you know the story? Do you want to tell it?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead.
him and another guy were arrested for attempted murder on 2 cops. So they spent 34 years in prison for this. He's like I say, he just recently got out, but were you gonna say something else?
I was just gonna say that he could explain everything that he did that day.
He's talked about meeting Oswald and showed him to the hotel and all stuff, and
he said Oswald was a very quiet, very smart, but very quiet, self-contained person who basically he did what he was told, kind of person.
Well, he knew stuff about Oswald prior to him even being.
Well, supposedly they're both ex-military, and that he
Yeah.
went to sniper school too, and
this
Oswald
was
was
in
there.
the documentary.
The documentary, I never got to. I'll let you borrow it still, but
It's really good. It stemmed from the CIA to the mafia. It was all these people who had connections throughout each other, So you got government officials plus the mafia who got the ties, like, hey, I'll do this for you if you do this for me, kind of thing.
Make an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah,
Right.
basically.
Well, who else did he involve? Did he involve?
There was multiple people involved in that was going to do the shooting. It was, you had like plan A, plan B, plan C, all this stuff. It was when the car got to a certain point, someone was supposed to fire, or if you didn't have the shot, you don't do it.
this goes back to the turkey shooting we talked about last week with the multiple shooters, multiple angles,
Right.
all across the place. Now there is a bit there. This guy File says that the actual shooter who shot the 3rd shot was a guy named Charles Nicoletti, who was a Chicago hitman for the Chicago mob. If you want to pull up, Max, there's a building next to the book depository called the Dallas, I had it right here, sorry. It's called the Dallas, Texas, or wait, let me see real quick here, I'm sorry. That's one of them, yes. It's called the Dallas Tex building. Right next to the actual book depository on the left. We'll show it here in just a second. Bless you. So this is right next to the, you see the sixth,
Right.
the depository is next to it.
You see it up there at top.
6 floors above that, and then the 3rd floor. Why is it so significant? Is James Files says that Charles Nicoletti, one of the Chicago hitmen, was positioned there. Which also, there's a documentary I saw recently called The Smoking Gun. That there's new evidence that this. There's a sharpshooter, and he's gonna pull this next picture up. This is supposedly the window that where Nicoletti shot from. That he whittled out that screen, so he could put his gun through there and shoot.
Interesting.
That which could give cause to where the shots coming from the 3rd floor, not the 6th floor, possibly. That the gun
it could give that echo of the 6th floor shot.
Right. He says the 3rd shot, we'll show here in a few seconds, is the one that hit Kennedy from behind, where his head's going forward. That's supposedly the last and final shot that did all the damage, but James Files says he fired a 4th shot. He wasn't supposed to. The only time he was supposed to fire from the grassy knoll was if, I think you pulling up Nicoletti, is that you're pulling up next?
Yeah, him.
Yep, this is the guy that fired the 3rd shot, Charles Nicoletti, who was a Chicago hitman.
So the 3rd shot in this scenario was which shot?
That one that he fired from that 3rd floor.
Which hit what?
Hit him in the back of the head. And you see
Okay.
the shot on the video where he's going forward, the headshot.
He's already going forward this way.
Yeah. Now Files said he fired a 4th shot at the same time, and it pushes his head back, which is the one that you see exploding at the same time as the 3rd. They hit at the same time, supposedly.
Because you do kind of see Kennedy leaning forward really quickly.
And go back.
And then boom, he's going back.
Which we'll show that in just a second here, the actual video.
So that means that there'd still be a bullet, one bullet in, because there was not another exit.
Well, that's just it. He said the type of bullet they used were fragmented, like they call them, where they fragment. They're used to make burst. They're made to explode. Full Metal Jacket, we talked about it later.
Yeah.
That's why the sniper rifle one goes through whatever, but the fragmented bullets explode. That's why there's no bullet nowhere. I mean, it's made to explode on contact. Now, there's reports that File in his report of this whole thing, he said that he shot a special bullet made of mercury tipped, whatever. That way, it's supposed to do a certain thing. In the actual autopsy report, there is mercury traces on Kennedy's body that was never just disclosed ever. That File should never have had knowledge of. Is it true? I don't know. But here he has this bullet. There's no way he could have known, and we'll talk about it here in a second. He also talks about from the grassy knoll, he fired the bullet. The actual casing that he caught, he has it. He takes a bite into it as a way of a marking, kind of a funny joke. Puts it on top of the actual grassy knoll, the actual fence.
The picket fence that's
behind the grassy knoll.
Yeah, not you got the grassy knoll that's ahead. He's positioned over here by the picket fence that's on the side of the building.
He puts it on top of the ledge, and he'll talk about it in just a second here. And they actually find this bullet years later down the road. And 13 years later, in 1986, a guy finds it
In the ground.
that where it must have fallen off. Takes it. They go to an actual. There's some kind of odd markings on it, or indentions. They do some ballistic tests on it. They find out it's teeth marks from something. Well, so what? Files is not in prison at this point, so he could have, placed it there at any point in time, right? Well, the thing is, the bullet themselves, it's been tested where it was made. Was it done? It was made prior to 71.
Yeah, the bullet itself was made prior to 1970, so therefore it had to be sometime in the 60s, which they think the marking that there's a certain mark on it. They believe it's around 1963 was when the bullet was made.
But yet the bullet was found 10 years later, or not 10 years later, but 1986. So it was found 23 years later.
So it was like down in the
Where if it was up on top like he said it did, it fell down at some point, and they found this actual bullet.
Because there's like shrubs and stuff like that.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, they keep it all cut and stuff like that, but you go digging around, if you're a historical person and you're thinking, well, if the shot ever came from here, would there be any shell cases? So somebody finally started digging around, and
don't they,
find,
they talked to him too about that, like when
Right,
he
is
used to
that
go
gonna be
on
in
some of
video
the other
anyways?
hits.
Let's watch this video real quick.
Is he
and
gonna
see.
talk about
I
that?
think so.
Okay, so play F, the headshot, if you would. Max, sorry. This is where he talks about James File himself. It may be a little long, but it's about 2.5 minutes roughly, this video. And then when you're ready to kill our mics, so I can play it in here.
There is an ongoing conflict between what the Dallas doctors saw and reported versus what the autopsy doctors in Bethesda, Maryland saw and reported. There's another line of evidence also for this shot to the right front, and that comes from one of the technicians at the autopsy. After the autopsy doctors were done, then the morgue personnel came in and tried to restore Kennedy to a presentable appearance, and apparently they were quite successful. But Tom Robinson, who was one of these technicians, describes how he saw a small hole in the right forehead near the hairline. He had to plug this hole to keep the embalming fluid from coming out. That's pretty striking. So we have multiple lines of evidence, the x-rays, the photographer, Tom Robinson. We have even some clues from Parkland itself that there was a bullet entry wound in the right forehead. So we have this whole sequence of events strongly suggesting, particularly the x-rays, that there was a shot to Kennedy's right forehead from the front. So none of that information, none of that evidence was in the official autopsy report, and it was not in the Warren Commission report.
Mr. Nicoletti and I had fired approximately at the same time as the hit started forward, then it went backwards. And when I would have to say that his shell struck approximately 1,000th of a second ahead of mine.
So I'm quite convinced today that Kennedy was in fact hit twice in the head. Once from the right rear, just as the official report says, but then after that, he was hit a second time in the head from the right front, the bullet passing right at the hairline above his right eye. So we have, that's probably the major disagreement on the headshots, that there were 2 instead of 1 in the Warren Commission report, and that one of those shots to the head came from the front.
Further evidence from an article by Dr. David Mantic sheds new light on the case and support File's claim that he was the shooter. Mantic claims that the x-rays of Kennedy's brain and skull fragments indicate traces of mercury. Files says he fired the fatal shot with a mercury round. During his interviews, Files spoke of a .222 shell casing he ejected from his Remington XP-100 Fireball, an experimental gun Files said was given to him by David Atlee Phillips. A Texas man named John Rodemaker and his son discovered this .222 caliber shell casing on the grassy knoll in 1987.
I found the first shell casing 6 feet towards the end of the fence and 6 feet off the picket fence, right before the stairs goes down to Elm Street.
The dating of Rodemaker's findings is corroborated by anthropologist Gary Hughes, who stated that according to archaeological dating techniques, the shell casing is consistent with a 1963 deposition date, and by the manufacturer's markings on the casing, which indicate the date of production being before 1971.
I took this shell casing as it come out to the briefcase, closed the briefcase up, and as I stood up, I did something I shouldn't have done, but I did do it. I took the shell casing, I bit down on it. I took it out and I looked at it and I set it on the stockade fence. And there was an indentation from my teeth on the shell casing on the ridge by the orifice. Mr. Nicoletti would laugh at me when I do things like that, and hey, you know, we gotta let them know what they got here for, you know. To me it was a symbol. say a calling card, trait, whatever you want to do. He used to laugh at me over it. He told me, Jimmy, just you do the job, you do it, and forget about it. If he would have known I did that in the Dealey Plaza, right now he's probably turning over in his grave for me doing something that stupid.
In 1993, Dr. Paul G. Stimpson, a dental forensic expert at the University of Texas at Houston, wrote this letter concluding that marks on the 222 shell casing were indeed human dentition teeth marks. He identified the teeth as the right central and lower right central incisors. Since there has never been any publicity on the dents in the shell casing, and nobody knew what they were, it is impossible that James Files could have known that a dent mark was on the shell casing, unless he put it there himself.
So what do you guys think? All of a sudden you got this guy that shouldn't have had no knowledge of some of this stuff, and as you saw in some of the stills of the video, it looks like there's a back shot, like he claims there was, and a headshot at the same time almost.
It does almost look like that when you slow it down and you talk about
Frame
it.
by frame, yep.
You
And
almost do see that.
And then here he is talking about his bullet he placed upon the actual grassy knoll itself, or the picket fence that's found in 1987.
What if one of the headshots is the reason for the nick in the windshield?
I don't know.
And what's a better way to cover that up than to get rid of all the evidence in the car by cleaning out the car really quickly?
Like I said, this is one angle I heard in recent months, even though it's been out for a while now, but some people that are big, like I said, into conspiracy theorists about this, that they think File's crazy, but why does he have all this knowledge of all this stuff?
Because it was given to him.
But he bit into the bullet though, and they found the bullet in 1987.
Somebody told him about it. I don't know.
I'm just saying,
I'm trying to poke the bear.
and the bullet's marked, the bullet's marked, or they have traces back to, 63. I mean.
Well, here's the thing, and me being a shooter, I have bullets that I probably haven't used in.
Right. All right, that's a good point.
4 years.
Right.
So if I shot them today, and they went to go look at it in 13 or 23 years, yeah, they're going to see that the bullet was made 4 years ago.
Right. But why 1963, the same year the president is murdered? And then he says he did all this. I mean, why hold on to bullets that long? In about 20 years, I'm going to put this bullet out there, and they're going to find it. And I mean, is it possible? Of course it is. Anything's possible.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying. I'm trying to figure out.
But it also makes sense from where he was standing, and he fires the shot. The guy who's over in the train tower, who's pretty nearby, he sees a commotion. He sees a flash coming from that area. He gets his attention because he's busy doing his work too, because he's got trains coming and stuff. He sees a commotion over there, and he sees a guy running off really quickly over to a car and getting the hell out of there. But he also sees a flash, and he's like, what the hell was that? And it's coming from that area. I mean, it all kind of makes sense. And plus the guy in the train tower ends up dying in a mysterious crash shortly after testimony as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It just gave a new angle to it that I've never really heard of until recently. But I'm not saying it's the case solved, we're done.
No.
But it just adds another piece to it. Now, if you go to like the Warren Commission, they're going to say, nope, this is what we said, this is what happened. So be it.
I mean, there had to be like some sort of like fingerprints on there. Possibly.
I don't know. Out in the elements, 20-some years.
Yeah. I mean, they may get something. DNA from anything is going to be deteriorated. You're not going to get anything from that.
Do a dental casting.
There could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would be one thing, is going to File himself and doing that. But, that would be opening up a lot of...
I just find it weird for a guy that's in prison. Like, he's already in prison.
He did it because the guy who was doing the documentary and the journalist who was trying to tell his story, because he, I believe, thought there was something very weird about everything, and met File, heard his story, did the investigation, did the backstories of everything, tried to get him to talk, and he didn't, and they became friends over the years. And then this journalist dies. he passes away.
Right.
And File finally decides, you know what, in honor of him and all the hard work he's doing, here's the story.
Yeah, but even hearing the story, like if I was some sort of government official, I'd have been like, hey, we need to get this stuff done and
They've interviewed
find
him,
out.
supposedly, and they just brush it off saying that he's
It's-
crazy, basically, or, he has no, whatever he's saying is not factual kind of a thing. I mean,
It's easy just to walk away saying, oh, he's nuts, he's crazy, and people go,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
he said the guy named Gary Marlowe killed Tippett, which explains why another guy was running away. I mean, also too.
From eyewitnesses who saw that.
Yep. He said JFK was killed as a result of the CIA and the mob wanting him killed, which we kind of
During his interviews, Files spoke of a .222 shell casing he ejected from his Remington XP-100 Fireball, an experimental gun Files said was given to him by David Atlee Phillips. A Texas man named John Roderick and his son discovered this .222 caliber shell
leads.
case.
I mean, most of these people are all dead. Marlowe's dead, Nicoletti's dead. Only Files remains, basically.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to back up any of the stories other than the fact that the bullet casing was there. I don't know. I don't know what I think. It has an interesting twist to it, like I said. And
Well, and they went back in, and every time he said somebody was coming in to question him, they found records of them showing up
yeah,
at the prison.
Man.
he just has too much information. It seems like that he should have never known, that was never made public, that he's
You
brought
would just
out.
think that the government would find a way to like detain him and not release
Well,
him.
he's
from
been in prison. Yeah, he's got out recently because his sentence up.
He's convict, so no one's going to really believe his story
Right.
anyway. So you got to take it for what it is, but I don't think they ever figured he'd make a documentary or be a part of a
Right.
documentary.
And if
And
anything
telling it,
would happen to him, they'd say, he must have been telling the truth because they had to get rid of him.
Right. So you
I
get,
mean-
yeah, nowadays you can't just knock him off and.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like if for some odd reason, let's say the government did have something to do with that, it was a combination of all of these theories, somewhere in the middle. You know, that's the actual truth. For somebody to come out and be like, yep, that was me. I shot the president right in the head. Me being a part of that government, I would have been like, hey, have fun. Bye. Have a good day.
The thing
Lock
of
him
it,
up.
thing
He's
of
done.
it is, I mean, then you're going against the whole Warren Commission. You're going against
Right.
everybody in history who's ever written anything in the history books. You're taking everything away, and then you got to reteach it. And you know
That
what?
happens
Sometimes,
every day.
but sometimes it's too much for people to actually go back and do it. You're saying now that the whole Warren Commission was wrong, that the CIA was wrong and connected. It's a whole lot of things. But if it's easier just to say, he's crazy, just let him talk, whatever he wants to do. It was Oswald, 3 shots, done.
If you gave him any credence or anything, then that would make it maybe more truthful that he. So
But
you
in
just
here,
had
they
kind of
actually
ignored
kind of do. They don't ignore it in the documentary because there's 2 or 3 several different FBI agents that are actually questioning themselves because the evidence is that he has, even when they were back younger, it's showing pictures of them when they were trying to nail the case. They're older and they're going, we've been trying to get this shit forever. How does this guy know this? Because you're not, the way he's in prison, nobody's going to call him, nobody's going to come to see him and give him all this information. It just wouldn't happen. And that's what got me watching the documentary is how the FBI even sits there and goes, we were amazed. There wasn't even, after a while, there wasn't even a point that they did not take him seriously. They always took him seriously. Which is odd because the FBI, the CIA, the government, they're trained to call bullshit.
Right.
And they couldn't do it.
They have actual, on the actual documentary itself, there's actual, they're retired now, but FBI, CIA guys on there that kind of give credit to him. Like, there's no way. I mean, the stuff he's telling us, what he's saying, we checked out and it's true. I mean, just a lot of, they add to the stories and,
Or is it a poor distraction for a bigger cause? That's my conspiracy theorist in me right there.
I don't know. It just made, like I said, interesting.
That's what changed my mind on this whole thing is those guys.
Right.
you know, because they're trained to catch that. They're
Yeah.
trained to call that, you know, and going in through all the records, going in and trying to see if people did give him, there wasn't anything,
Right.
you know. So yeah, interesting. I have a completely different outlook on it now that I.
Hearing his story was complete, you know, it made sense from everything that people were hearing that day, from the smoke being smelt down by the bridge, because that, over there by that fence, it is closer to the, to the underpass, to the train tower guy, I forget what his name is, sorry, but, you know, seeing the commotion and hearing what he thought he heard and saw over by the fence made sense to what Vile says, that he was standing right there, took the shot real quick, put it in the briefcase, walked off. But before, he bid on the shell casing, put it up there, and left.
Yeah, because that was his thing back in the day when he'd go whack somebody, he'd bite that, leave it there.
There's also supposedly photos of people on the grassy knoll, but they're too grainy. That's why I didn't put them in here, because it looks like trees. It's black and white. The footage of that time is hard to tell.
And
What
just
those
matrixing,
blobs,
yeah.
blob squatch. Looks like that kind of stuff, but.
So you're saying Blob Squatch shot the president?
If they can find him, they haven't found him yet. See?
But it,
See how
you
it
know,
goes back full circle?
the supposed shots in the bushes, you know, does like it just makes it so. I mean, you got that photograph right there. That supposedly they can make that out over here.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah. That looks like nothing to me.
Would you like to share with the class?
No.
No, I'll share it. You know, I'll share it. This, you know, could it be somebody like File that's over there?
Is that the same area that he was at?
Up on the grassy. This is the grassy knoll once again. This is the
fence.
Fence, yeah.
And supposedly what you're seeing there is, you know, a face, a badge, supposedly, and a blast being shot at the time of the actual, the president's dying right there.
And he had the best angle, if this is true, for the final headshot, whatever, because like I said, if you ever get a chance to go to Dallas, go walk that and look at it, because that makes the most sense as far as the angle-wise. I mean, it's right there, and it's close.
Yeah, I was just there 2 years ago, just walking the whole, you know, having more of a mind for everything now, standing there at the fence, standing where Zapruder stood, and then listening to people that were there on the street talking about the story. They're like, yeah, I've been working over here for 20 years. I know this area by heart. You know, there's all the different trajectories that you could have taken shots at, and there's a lot of reports that that's where they were all positioned at.
Right.
When the president took that turn, that's when they just did the countdown of who was going to take the shots.
Yeah, if you get a chance, like I said, check out the documentary. It's called, like I said, I Shot JFK, and it's pretty fascinating. It's about 55 minutes. I mean, the extended uncut version is. Another one you can watch is called The Smoking Gun. That one's interesting because there's a guy on there who was a sharpshooter that CBS did a special back in the, I think, 70s, 80s about it. I talked about it last week. The guy that was a gunsmith, owned his own shop. He was a sniper in the military. He tried to do the shots himself. They had like 4 or 5 guys, I think 3 or 4 guys that were trying to recreate these same shots. Only one guy could do it. It took him 3 tries to do it. The 6-second shot to make every shot that supposedly happened. This guy, the Warren Commission told him, "Hey, try to prove our case." Basically, he went in and did some things. He, through his research and discovery, he found out that one of the shots fired was from a different angle versus the one up high. So it couldn't have been from the sixth floor, which maybe it was the 3rd floor we just talked about. I don't know. The angle of itself, the way it went in, it couldn't have made that shot from up above. He talks about also the entry wounds to the actual bullets. Some of them, because I must have Manson, Jesus. Oswald, same person. No, I'm kidding. Oswald, he fired a 6.55 millimeter, rifle slug, whatever you want to call it. And some of the wounds were too, I'm trying to say this wrong. The wounds were too small for that to go through. And because of the width of it, that other bullets from a possible different gun matched better. Because they're 6.55, so it should have made like I can't remember what he said, I think it goes up to like 7 centimeters. Should have made it bigger, or makes it the other way
when
around.
it comes to human skin, that really doesn't
Yeah,
play too much of a factor.
If you watch the documentary, it makes more sense. I'm not doing it justice, but it made more sense because even the skull part, he took a drill on the skull and drilled it. Tried putting a bullet, same size slug, and tried to put it through there, wouldn't fit there. Tried a different size bullet, and it fit perfect. That was in one of the reports. So it gives a theory, it gives credit to something else possibly of
When it
before the
comes to
shooter, or
blood,
another shooter,
yeah.
excuse me. It's worth watching. I wish I could find it. I couldn't find it online, but I watched it on TV recently because all this come up to lead up to the anniversary, and so it's like a 2-hour program. It's pretty awesome. But so, what are your guys' thoughts overall? I mean, I know we kind of touched base throughout the programs last week.
They both did it.
Ruby.
I still think after in the beginning, I thought the shots came from up top, just because that's what everybody's always thought. I wasn't real big into the conspiracy theory
You still
like
think?
you are.
You still think?
I don't think that anymore.
You still think? Oh, I thought I was.
I don't think it was. I don't think he did it. I honestly don't. I think there were multiple shooters, like you said, and like a lot of people think. And I don't think he did it. I think he may have been the one that put the gun up there. There's evidence that he showed up to work with something that was covered.
Yeah, he
Right.
showed
Come
up with
on, what
something.
else would it have
He
been?
said it was
you know,
curtain rods
yeah,
in a sack.
and I think he was a scapegoat. I think if you watch the documentary that we just talked about, he even brings that up.
Right.
That he was a scapegoat. He was a new guy on the scene. They'd get him to do about whatever he wanted.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like you said, oh shit, this is going down.
Right.
And I think he ended up realizing what happened.
What's your
So.
thought?
I buy into the conspiracy theory. I think Oswald was a patsy and got. I think that they probably said, "Oh well, you're clear. You're not going to get, trouble for it or anything." Ruby, I think he was part of it, and this guy was very interesting. And I kind of tend to believe him, and I think that.
I mean, even just in that, couple minutes that you watched him, if you watch the full documentary, he's very straight to the point of how it was. And from the early 90s to 2003 when they talked to him again, his story hasn't changed. It's the same thing.
Word for word.
And he's telling you exactly how it happened. This is what it is. Now, is he someone that sits in jail and has time to put this all in his head? Sure. But he's too convincing to actually, like Rose said, there's too much. He knows too much. It's
The details.
the details that go along with it.
He knows too many details that only somebody possibly linked to the case would know.
Right.
Whether he's telling the truth 100%, I don't know.
Well, and you look at the pictures and stuff, and you know that there's not all the shots are coming from behind. I mean, you can see him slump forward, you can see backwards, and
Yeah, when you slow it down like that, it really.
you know it's not
And you
all.
hear in the story of the two shooters hitting at the same exact time, it almost does look like he goes forward real quick and then bam. That's when you see that other shot, and that's where the blood and the total brutality of the head wound would just explode.
Right, especially using full metal jackets like they talked about. That's supposed to do that. It's supposed to be a fatal. It's meant to be a fatal shot. I mean, that's what they were going for. And he was told not to fire the shot unless there was a headshot, and he never saw it coming. That's why he fired. He said, not knowing the third shot was coming already at the same time, he just happened to fire, and whatever he said, thousandth of a second.
It makes sense to me.
I mean, I don't know. That's just.
Well, and the stuff that he knows, it's almost like in the movies when you watch a group getting ready to go rob a bank. Only those 7 guys would know what in the hell's going on.
Or the 8th one that's back at the base who helped plan it.
Right.
And set it all
and then one comes forth 30 years later and decides to spill the beans, you're gonna know what those other 6 guys did.
Yeah.
You're gonna know where they came from. You're gonna know where they flew in
You're
from.
gonna be able to explain this. And
You're not
this.
gonna get that from an FBI agent or CIA agent that wants to be corrupt. It's just not gonna happen.
And if you knew that the police and the CIA and everybody was in on it, then you have the freedom to move around and get positioned and know what you're doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and maybe we'll never know, even when the documents come out, all the documents officially, if they ever come out, we'll probably still won't know, because
No.
all of them will be.
Now, I do have a
covered.
question. Why, this guy's getting ready to get out. He knows he's getting ready to get out. So one,
He's out already.
right,
Yeah.
meaning when he did this.
Oh, you mean document
okay,
stuff, yeah.
because he did this prior to him getting
Right.
out. So is he thinking record deal, book deal, movie deal?
You know,
So they
I'm gonna
interviewed
come up
him
with all this, or
2003.
Yeah.
is he
13
thinking,
years later.
or is he
13 years later.
thinking,
yeah.
I could get shot and killed over this stuff? So
Well, everybody's dead though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's no
Most
big
of
deal.
everybody's dead.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
not much he can actually say. It's basically his word against theirs
Right.
now. It's a story. It's a good story, whether or not it's real or not.
But
Yep.
I mean, still, there was 13 years between him telling the story and him getting out.
Well,
Yeah.
he started telling it in '94, and
Well,
then
right,
and
but
then
it's not
2003 he told it again. I mean, they were still building the case, telling the story and stuff. I mean, I'm sure documentary just came out. He's still telling this story. He's still saying that. And I'm sure people are still coming to him talking about it. If he makes money out of it, well, then that's for him. That's good for him, I guess.
And I guess if he had a good
But-
story like that, why not make money off of it?
Yeah, but in the end result, it's a sad case, because one, American people will never know for sure. 3 people lost their lives out of the whole ordeal, and it's still, you can go with history or you can try to do your own thinking on it.
Oh, I think the sad part for me is thinking about what the world could have been if JFK would have lived.
Yeah.
Not the whole, because I can remember the Vietnam War, and I can remember sitting through the drafts. And I had a husband that he had a low number, and and knowing that if I had been male at that time, I would have had to go to Vietnam.
Right. Yep.
my dad had to go. I mean,
And
it's
Yeah.
everybody
My dad.
did if you were male, basically.
And think of all, and I used to sit there and you'd see all the names of everybody, all the soldiers that were killed that day and stuff.
I mean, just think if we never had gone
Yeah.
to Vietnam. What if that war didn't happen at that particular time? Maybe there could have been another war that happened 10 years later or something like that. What if things didn't happen? We never went, and the lives that could have changed, the world that could have been different.
Right.
Yeah.
We won't know.
Yeah.
No, it's one of the best, like I said, conspiracy theories out there that, I don't know. I think we're farther from solving something that's so possibly solvable, but versus like we're going to the moon or something, we'll say. That one, I know,
Or it could have already been solved, we just don't know
we may never know it, because they could come in, because Trump said they had not 25 days, was it 6 months to do what they need to do?
Yeah,
Yeah, so he's gonna release the rest of them, but they'll probably come down to it, and
it won't happen.
it'll change all the word, redact all of them
Yeah.
or whatever, so.
Well, I think it will happen. I think it will happen to probably cover up something else he was planning to do in 6 months anyway.
Yeah, could be.
it. I think in 100 years from now, it may come out. They may release the uncut version
Here, guys,
of
we
it.
took the black marker off of it. We gave you the wrong copies before. My bad.
Well, we better finish
Yep,
up.
we're over our time just a little bit, but,
Bye,
Oh,
Rome.
yeah.
yeah.
Use the restroom.
Okay. So it was a fun episode. I mean, obviously we couldn't solve it in one 2-hour episode, and we still haven't yet, an additional 2-hour episode. So,
For JFK, part 3 next week.
yeah, right? What if? No, I'm kidding. What if JFK wasn't real? No, I'm kidding.
His name was Alex.
My name's Jeff. So, I don't know, man. It's a weird way to end this, but that's how history has been going on for all these years since '63. So
Yeah.
it's just, I wish we had the answers.
I mean, we'll probably discuss it a little further down the road again
Yeah.
with more things that we come up with.
This
Right.
time next
I
year.
mean, we haven't even
Right.
gotten into Robert Kennedy, and that's a whole nother
Oh,
story
God.
too.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole nother conspiracy, which they actually have facts about.
Yep. So
So
that'll be a fun one to talk about too at some point. So
Yeah.
how it ties into this topic. So very cool. Well, it's been a fun episode, guys. We'll see you guys next week. We'll be back at the same time, same friendly place. Probably with more people. I don't know if Jeremiah will be back next week or not, and Max will be on the panel this time instead of behind the scenes. So
You never know.
yeah. So we'll be back next week, and any one thing you want to talk about Dot City or anything? We're at wrap it up.
Yeah, so, we've got a sold out event on January 13th. Fundraiser for the Depot Theater there in Dodge City. And it sold out so quickly, so the Depot wanted another one, so we're going January 27th as well. I believe tickets are still on sale for that. Call the Depot Theater in Dodge City for your reservation. As far as I know, there's still more tickets available, but it may not. It may be sold out. I haven't heard. So, but I'll post details the more I find out.
Yep. Very cool. And look for us for more upcoming events. They come about almost every day. It seems like we got things in the works already. But yeah,
I'll stop bringing them to you guys.
No, that's what keeps us busy. This is what we do. So all right, guys. Well, I guess that's it for the evening. Appreciate you tuning in, people at home, people in the studio. Thank you. Hope everybody had a good, happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Good night.
See ya.
Good night.